Hi everybody, it's Martin from Branco Customs here. I just want to show you a little refurbishment project that I'm doing today, which is of this old trapper knife. Now, this has been given to me by a chap who has had this knife passed down to him from his father. And doing some research on them, it looks like these knives started production between 1930 and 1960 in Solingen in Germany. And as you can see, this knife has had a fair bit of use. There's a few little dings on it that we'll detail later, and show you the process from start to finish of how we're going to clean it up and the sheath. So looking at finer detail here of what we need to do, starting with the sheath, there's obviously a lot of wear on the end here. I've got fairly limited skills with leather, but we'll see if we can certainly improve the quality of the leather around there. And up at this end, it now currently has a piece of elastic holding on where there used to be obviously a wrap round with a clip held on with a small rivet. So that side of it we should be able to get cleaned up. And then moving on to the knife itself, this is where it gets more interesting, and I've got a few choices to make so far as how much to make a start on, because again, I don't want to take away the aged character of the knife too much, but at the same time the whole idea is to clean it up. So one of the main things the gentleman was concerned with was the fact that the bevel has been completely resharpened so many times that there isn't one anymore. We basically got effectively a convex grind going on. Other than that, some areas there's obviously a fair amount of corrosion around here, which is typical because it's a high carbon steel, so it's going to rust. But again, we can clean this up and make it look a lot fresher and nicer. We'll probably put new bevels on the back and on the front and clean up the primary bevel here, and then clean up all of this rust underneath the handle. And again, you'll see there's quite a large gap in the material here, which is fairly typical because the antler that it's made from is not a stabilized material. So where you can see the fitment on that piece of antler is pretty perfect all the way around. So realistically, that piece of antler has warped a little bit and shrunk over the years to leave this gap. So I'll look to see if I can clean out any debris that's in there and maybe refill it with a color appropriate pigment. And then other than that, on the pommel here, you may just see there's some marks where it's seen some denting in the past on both sides. So again, I'll probably go around over those just with a fine emery to see if we can get those back to a bit of a better polish and a slightly better fitment. Okay, I'm going to make a start cleaning up the blade first of all. On the back side here, I'm going to start with some 800 grit emery paper and a square G10 board in order to wrap around it. So basically by doing that, we'll keep this edge as square as possible, although it's already fairly rounded. It's nice to not interfere with the geometry any more than is necessary. So we'll basically start by giving a few strokes across the flats here, and using this 800 grit is quite a fine abrasive, so really it's just polishing the surface, and then that will show us any deep scratches that are left. Again, here it's not too bad. You can see that there's some pitting and things, which has been caused by just general corrosion over the years, but it's probably been cleaned and things like that. So that's not too bad. We might work that a little bit further, certainly getting into here and polishing, but without scratching the bolsters any more than is necessary. But let's have a few strokes on the main bevel here and see what that shows up. So yeah, that's basically polishing the top edge, and then anything that stands out you can see is a deeper scratch into it. So along here there's quite a few striations where maybe it was used on a more aggressive stone or cutting through something that was abrasive, which has left a few fairly deep scratches in there. So we may need to work on that a fair bit to get it a nice uniform finish. Okay, so I've been working on this surface for about an hour now, and what's nice to see is where I've been working on the flat areas, you can now almost see where the old bevel line used to be. And again, right up close to the hilt here, you can see there's an old maker's mark, which is not very easy to see. Again, I pretty much tried to stay away from that area, because again it's a bit like sacrilege trying to polish one of those until it disappears. It takes away a lot of character of the knife, so I'll try and clean around that as a separate operation altogether. That's basically taking this down to a 1200 grit across its length. So this is a quick look at the opposite side of the knife before I make a start. So again, you can see there's a few deeper scratches in there. Again, the bevel pretty much blends into the primary bevel, and you can see on here it used to say original trapper knife, handmade in Solingen, and I'm presuming that used to say Germany, but it's already worn away. Again, there's a tiny bit of writing down in here which says something Junior, Solingen, Germany. So I'll give this a clean up now and I'll show you when it's done. Just going to show you a little trick that I use here. In the past you can see where this writing has been worn away. It's probably someone didn't use a flat block when cleaning the edge of the blade, and it's just rounded it over by rubbing it with wire wool or something like that. So what you can do is get a Sharpie marker, colour in the areas that you're going to want to be working on, and again this will wash off afterwards, just a quick wipe of acetone, whatever's left. And then once that's dried, you get again the flat square block piece of 800 grit. And then we'll give that just a few strokes, and again you can instantly see that using this bevel as the flat edge, that there is where the square edge of the line used to be. So hopefully I'll keep working and see if we can re-establish that somewhat. Then this top area here, cleaning that up, that'll literally just be a few very light strokes of highest grit emery paper, just to literally polish the very top edge without wearing away any depth, so that the nice writing that's on there will last for hopefully another 90 odd years. I'll finish sanding this side of the blade as well, so I've just gone on with a little bit of auto sole polish, which is one of the best ones for getting a nice look on steel. So we'll just give that a little bit of a buff. Again, because along here where the writing is, I didn't go very much at all, just a couple of licks with 1200 grit. This should help just to bring out a little bit of brightness in the steel and even out all of those 1200 grit lines. Okay, so this is after the auto sole polish, and it's starting to look like a completely different knife. Next up on the agenda, we're going to start looking at the bolsters. The ones at the back are in the worst shape, where you can see there's these dents and things in them. So I'm going to try and get those out. And also there's a little bit of unevenness. You can just see there's a lip standing proud here, but on the other side is still completely flush. So effectively, again, with the shrinkage of the materials over time, they no longer fit together very well. So I'm just going to also linish the edges around there, over here, and then clean up that to match up the spine and clean that at the same time. So in order to remove the dents on the bolsters, I'm going to use a very fine grit on the belt sander here, just to basically linish the dents down till they disappear on both sides. Okay, so I stopped just for a second so I can show you how that's looking. So you can see there, it's just the slightest witnesses of what used to be quite a large hole. And once I've done this, I'll basically go back just probably 600, 800, 1200 and a little bit of polish in order to bring that back to its original state, but without all the damage. Okay, so now turning my attention to this crack here. Basically what I plan to do is go through very carefully with a fine scalpel and basically remove any of the debris that is in there. And again, you can see just how far in that crack, well, it's not a crack, but that separation goes. It's pretty much to the other side. Now there's no point trying to force that back down because you always risk it probably popping back up again. So basically we're going to fill that with a equal colour epoxy. Okay, so I've just used a little bead of West Systems G-Flex epoxy, which is pretty much the standard in knife making, to fill in that little gap there. And again, the colour it sets isn't too dissimilar to the antler either, so it won't look too out of place, and it will save water ingress and things in the future. So now I've finished grinding the bevel onto there till we got a nice fine burr along the entire edge, which means that the apex of the metal is at a complete point. I then strop the knife. Going to use Auto Sol, which funnily enough is also made in Solingen, Germany, so same place as the birthplace of this knife. What I do is, got a piece of leather here, rough side up. We'll basically put a little of that on there, rub it in, and this acts as a fine abrasive, which then hones the edge of this knife until the burr basically breaks off and leaves a perfectly straight apex on the edge of the blade. Okay, so let's have a look at how sharp this thing is. And that should do it.